Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live Faith Gateway author chat. I'm Sammy Cohn, your host and curator of the family section at FaithGateway.com. And we are going to be brave today. That's right. We are joined by the one, the only Annie Downs. Hello there, Annie.
Hi, Sammy. How are you, friend?
I am fantastic. I should just note that for everyone that joins us today, we've got a special offer on your fabulous book, Let's All Be Brave.
Oh, yeah, the slow movement
You
across.
like the slow, I'm doing my best right there. So you've got to stay tuned for that. It's a better price than you'll get anywhere. Plus, if you have a question, if you want to join us in our chat, use the hashtag Let's All Be Brave. We'll get to as many questions as possible. But first, Annie, I feel like I need to congratulate you, not only on the book, not only were you our first ever live author chat participant, you're the first repeat guest.
Yes! So you didn't fire me after one time.
That's right. We love hearing what you have to say. Well, you know what? You're so real. And this book, aside from sharing how much respect you have for tennis players, which I fully appreciate,
Yes,
you do such a great job of sharing your own story while also encouraging others. You know, you're not telling people what to do, but tell us just a little bit about the background of Let's All Be Brave and why you felt the need to write this book.
You know, the number one reason I wanted to write Let's All Be Brave is just to say to my friends and say to the readers, you are already braver than you think. I think all of us hope to be brave and dream about being brave and think that being brave looks like these really big decisions. And sometimes it does. But other times, and most times, it is just these everyday little yeses or nos or standing up or sitting down. It's just these little moments that if you told me your story and you just told me about your day, I would be able to look at it and say, that was really brave when you did that. And that was really brave. And you'd say to yourself, that is not, I would have never labeled myself as brave. And so that's where this came from, was watching the friends and the people I loved around me live their lives and going, wait, we're all braver than we think. And we already have everything we need to be as brave as we could ever want to be.
Well, I was going to say, you work closely with young women, especially college-age women, but this is really transcends any gender, any age group, any demographic. I think, don't you find, probably especially in that age group, but with all of us, that we don't see ourselves in the way that we should? And like you said, when we can actually stand in front of someone else, they say, oh my gosh, you are not only so much prettier than you think, so much more talented than you think, but so much braver than you think. What is the key to really getting outside of ourselves and finding that brave person that God really, designed all of us to be?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's one of my favorite things about this book as well, is that, my first couple of books were for teen girls, and I love that demographic, but this is a book that any of my friends can display on their shelves. Like we have friends in Nashville, dudes in Nashville, who have been super supportive and bought my teen girl books, and they sit on their shelves and they'll never read them. But this is one that guys and girls and men and women and that everyone hopefully can connect with. I think for each of us, one of the bravest things we can do is recognize that God made us on purpose. That you aren't a mistake, that you haven't done something wrong, that He didn't do something wrong when He created you, and recognizing like, oh, these things about me were on purpose. God gave me these desires on purpose. God gave me these strengths on purpose. God put me in this family on purpose, and recognizing like, okay, that's all not accidental, but what do I do with it? What do I do with it now? If God made me on purpose, then what is my purpose? And what do I do next? Those are the two stories I want to tell with my whole life, that God made you on purpose and God made you to do the brave things. And we can find those and choose those and go after those in our daily lives when we understand that we weren't an accident and that we weren't a mistake.
Yeah, so let's be practical. I mean, this isn't a how-to book by any means, but it really does. No, but I love how it does. It challenges people to think about what they're doing and why they're doing it. So what would be the first tip that you would give in terms of helping someone embrace that? Is it finding someone else? Is it, just simply asking God? What are some of those things so that people do walk away, if they're not feeling very brave, thinking, okay, I can do this?
Yeah, so if there's a dream in your heart, I think, if there's a dream in your heart, I think you're right. The first thing you do is kind of talk to the Lord about it. When I first started wanting to be a writer, or first thought I might move to Nashville, it started with me and God talking about it. And then I think the real moment of stepping from being brave in your heart and being brave in your conversations with the Lord is when you tell someone else. In fact, I went to breakfast with a friend this morning, and we had a conversation where I said, I just need to say this out loud to you. I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know what's next. I don't even know if I'm right. I don't even know if I'm hearing God right, or if this dream is if I'm pursuing this the way I'm supposed to, per se.
Right.
But I'm saying it out loud, because something changes when it stops just being in your head and you're willing to say out loud to someone else, there's a chance I have a dream that I might be willing to pursue a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to go from like, you know, I'm going to change careers and announce it on the speaker at school or announce it via Twitter, right? But you can start going, I love my job, but I've always wanted to do this other thing. What would it look like to tell my wife that I wanted to think about trying something else? Or what would it look like to tell my coworkers, why don't we get together and talk about what else we could be doing to improve the environment at our job? You know, that kind of stuff. Like, it just starts with the conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think whether you're talking about yourself or whether you're talking about talking to God, there is something empowering about saying it out loud, whether it's just praying out loud even in your car, or whether it's just making that declaration, putting your foot down and just saying it, not knowing what's going to happen or where it's going to go. But I feel like you've illustrated that so well. Well,
thank you. And it doesn't lock you into, like, if you say it out loud, you're in a contract for the next 15 years for that to be your life path, you know? So even today when I was saying this stuff out loud to my friend, I was just going, I'm just saying it. And there's a story in Let's All Be Brave about a guy who came up to me at church and just said, I think maybe someday I want to write a book. Okay. You know, like, and that was 2 years ago. And he, as far as I know, he doesn't have a book out, but it wasn't about me going, well, then you need to do this and you need to do this. And that's not what he needed from me. When we need someone to encourage us to be brave, we don't need them to solve it for us.
Right.
We need someone to say, I believe you can do that. Now, whether we do it or not is a different story, but we just need people to say, I believe in you, and I believe in the brave things you want to do with your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the book for any of you that I love the cover, by the way. It's such a great
cover. I do too. You know, that the people who designed it are in Nashville, and I sent them cookies last week.
Good
I was
for
like, this is the greatest cover you've ever designed ever.
It is fantastic. And remember, you can all join in the conversation on social media, on Twitter, at #Let'sAllBeBrave. And if you haven't picked, I mean, you need to pick this up, and we'll tell you how you can pick it up for a good deal, which we all love a good deal, right?
That's right.
But it's so clever. And each chapter kind of starts with a geographic marker, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
You're telling us different stories from different places, including, I mean, obviously Nashville, where we live, but also, I mean, Scotland. You're talking about, Georgia and all these different places. Tell us a little bit about how this, Scotland in this. I mean, talking about being brave.
Yeah. So after I moved to Nashville in 2008, and then in the summer of 2011, I had the opportunity to go work on staff at a church in Edinburgh, Scotland. And for most of my 20s, I had said no to certain opportunities because I really wanted to get married. And somewhere mixed up in my head, I thought, if I go overseas or if I say yes to this, I'm giving up the chance to get married, And so I'd kind of been a little more afraid of those kind of opportunities. And then in 2011, when the church offered for me to come be on staff, I thought, I'm 31, and I don't want to spend another decade of my life saying no to things that could be really good things from the Lord. And so I moved over to Edinburgh, and I loved it. And it is one of my favorite cities on the whole planet. And I can't wait till there's a day when we figure out transportation that can get me over the ocean in less than 18 hours. Like, I just can't wait. Oh, I just can't wait. I can't tell you, Sammy, you and I have talked about this, but because I live in Nashville and I have family and very dear friends in Marietta, Georgia, and I have very dear friends in Edinburgh, Scotland, that I have days where, to keep the panic from rising, I have to be like, when we all get to heaven, we will all be able to see each other as much as I want. I will not be limited by location. So, but I love it. And that's one of my favorite parts of the book too, is I love writing in coffee shops. Yeah. I love the hubbub. I love the people moving in and out. I love the smells. I love that it closes, so it makes me stop at some point. And so every chapter is written in a coffee shop. And so wherever I wrote part or all of that chapter, I made a note of it. And so it's kind of neat because it's kind of, Let's All Be Brave is kind of also a yearbook for me of sorts.
I was just going to say, yeah. Well, and you know what? We've gotten Twitter questions about what's your writing process or where do you write? And I love that it is such a natural progression for you. It's not like you just decided, I'm going to write a book this month and I've got to get it all done. I mean, it really, like, no.
No, that is not a process.
It really is you allowing God to kind of, speak into your life and then use that to teach others. But can you talk a little bit more about, what inspires you to write, where you write, things like that for the people that are wondering?
One of my favorite quotes is someone asked an author, do you only write when you're inspired? And he said, yes, and I get inspired every morning at 9 a.m., which is like the truth of our job. That is the truth of my job. The only way I get to put books in hands is if I am disciplined about when I sit down and write. And so the way it looks for me, because this is my full-time job, writing and speaking, if I travel on a weekend, I'm usually gone Thursday night, speak Friday, Saturday, and come home back to Nashville on Sunday. And I will do admin kind of work on Monday. I don't have an office. I work at my dining room table. Yeah. And that's how. And then Tuesday is my weekend. Tuesday is my Saturday. So I play with my friends and sleep in and whatever. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I write pretty disciplined. I get up every morning in general. Well, I wake up every morning, don't you? I get up every morning. And yeah, I'm usually writing from 9 to 5. I mean, I eat lunch with a friend usually because I'm extroverted times a million. And so sitting by myself for 8 hours makes me feel like I'm pulling my fingernails out. But some days it's at home, some days it's a coffee shop. Where I live in Nashville, I can walk to a couple of different coffee shops, but that gets expensive to spend $4 every day when I can sit at my house and drink water and be fine. So I also I think this is a little bit different about me than some writers. I love to write books in the winter because the days are short and I like the temperature. I like the darkness.
Me too.
I like that I can have warm drinks with me all the time. So I really love to write books in the winter. So whenever my agent and I are talking future books, we often say like, well, can we write from November to February? Can we turn it in February, March? So because that's my favorite time of year to write. I sometimes sit down. I sometimes stand up. I have a stand-up desk that I use a lot because sitting for 8 hours a day is not good for any of our bodies or our souls.
I'm picturing an Annie Downs writing retreat / lodge in your future. I can just see that.
Come on. I would love it. As long as other people are there. That whole go buy yourself to a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, no manifesto.
That may work for some of our people, but that does not work for me. I'd last for about 5 hours and I'd be like, does anybody want to come eat dinner? Does anybody want to come out to the cabin?
Who wants to bring me some food?
Yeah,
we've got more questions on Twitter, but before that I did promise a deal, so I want to let everyone know that for the next 48 hours, you heard me right, 2 days only. I should take down one hand. 2 days only. We have got a special code, 40% off. Let's All Be Brave. In case you missed my Vanna White earlier. 40% off plus free shipping. You know it's a good deal if you can get free shipping. All you have to do is go on the store at faithgateway.com and use the code BRAVE. So again, 48 hours only. It's store.faithgateway.com. The store at faithgateway.com. Use the code BRAVE, 40% off plus free shipping. So we've got a Twitter question here from Jeannie Reed, and she says, how do you discern between being brave and waiting on God's timing? I mean, so often we hear about you don't want to push ahead of God, right? But what advice do you have for Jeannie there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I am I'm not as good at waiting as I am about jumping out in certain things. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a trial and error thing. I think there's a verse in Jeremiah that says, whether you turn to the right or left, you'll hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And so I believe that the number one way we know the difference between jumping out and God's timing of waiting is to listen to the Lord. It's an interesting question because she says the difference between being brave and listening to God's timing, those aren't opposites to me. I don't think being brave sometimes being brave is waiting. When it looks like everything should go and you just feel this like, I'm not supposed to do it. That is being brave. And sometimes when things in the natural don't look like you should move forward, but you know what is going on in your heart and you've had confirmation through people and through God's word and you know the brave thing is to step out or to move or to do the thing, you do it, and that's God's timing. And I think there's also room for grace. Like, we're figuring this out. We're figuring out what it looks like to be brave on behalf of God for his people and for his glory. And we aren't always going to get it right. If you insist on only being brave when you're going to get it right, you are never going to make the brave choice. You've got to factor in that failure is part of this.
I hope people are hearing you too, because you made an interesting distinction that I probably didn't think of. You and I are both extroverts, shocking. And so the idea that, you know, being brave isn't always being bold or loud or outgoing. Sometimes it is in the quiet, in the silence, in the, you know, seemingly meaningless times of life that God actually wants to turn them into something meaningful. It leads into a Twitter question we have here from Charles Nichols. It says, I find I'm overly bold in some areas of my life and a total wimp in others. Where can I find consistency and wisdom? And I feel like that almost speaks right to that question. Don't you, Annie?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great question, Charles. I think here's a huge thing. If you are noticing in your life the areas that it's easy to be brave and the areas it's hard to be brave, that's awesome. Because that means that God's opened your eyes to parts of you that he made on purpose, like we talked about. And so I think, how do you find consistency in that, and how do you find wisdom in that? I think you start asking yourself, what is it about these three situations that makes me never want to be brave? You know, what is it? Is it because it's always about, what's the currency is almost the question. What's the currency that's similar in the ways that you are not willing to be brave? Is it a loss of people? Is it a financial loss? Is it a location loss? What feels like, well, every time I feel like I'm supposed to give up this, this, and this, I can't do it. Or every time I'm supposed to go, I can't do it. It's just interesting to think that. So that's how you find the consistency, is you start recognizing what are the themes here. So for me, a big theme is that what God always asks me to pay with is people. You know, for me, it is always, are you willing to leave those people? Are you willing to say something that may offend those people? Are you willing to take care of those people even when it makes you uncomfortable? Are you willing to sacrifice for those people? The currency is always people with me. And so I know when I'm not feeling brave that I'm feeling like either a people pleaser or like I'm being asked to give up someone who has become too important to me. I idolize people quickly. I idolize relationship probably. Like I idolize
that's a good way to say it.
And I want to put in, and sometimes the brave thing is to walk away from some of those things, or to jump into friendships that you're not sure where they're going to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I would say, Charles. I think you need to look at what the themes are. And then the beautiful thing about us having a God who gave us the word is that if we can find a theme in our lives that we need to be encouraged in, the Bible probably talks about it. So if if the theme is you're not willing to give up money because you're scared of not feeling safe or secure, then there is verses that talk to us about how we should treat money. And if it's about family, there's verses about family. And if it's about where you're going to go, there's verses about where you're going to go. And so I think that would be it.
Yeah, and I think, too, you know, not to over-spiritualize, but, you know, sometimes when you say listen to God's voice, I know for me as a new Christian, you know, a decade ago, it's like, what does that mean? What does it sound like? How, you know, and sometimes it's just, like you said, reading the Bible and those prompts that you get in your gut or in your head or those things. So when you're talking about listening to God, I want to make sure that we don't scare anyone off the things. I've never heard God speak before. Sometimes it's just that knowing when you hear, and that's why I think, you know, if you're just joining us, we were talking about saying something out loud. It's so brave just to tell another human being, or even to say it out loud in your car, because then you get that. I tell my kids, like, when you say something out loud, wait and see how you feel. Is there a peace, or is there a, I feel kind of icky about that?
Yeah.
So,
and everyone on every spectrum, from non-believers to people who've been Christians for 60 years, can tell you what it feels like when something registers right on their inside. Yes. I call it like your knower. It's like between your front and your back, and I picture a little blue cube. I don't know why, because I'm weird. But I picture this little blue cube in me that is my knower. And I trust that that the Holy Spirit connects with my spirit, and that I can hear and feel the right thing.
I love that. Love it. Well, we've got another Twitter question here from Linda Neely. Linda's asking, how can you be sure that what you feel called to do is from God or from your own desires, likes, preferences? So we kind of talked about what it's like to hear God, but then trusting, is this me pushing my will or is this God?
Yeah, I dealt with that a lot as a kid because I got saved when I was 5 and became a Christian when I was young and really meant it. And I grew up in a church that really emphasized missions, which is awesome. But I hate being hot. And I knew I never wanted to move to Africa. And so I would pray things like, oh no, God's going to make me go to Africa because I don't want to.
Right.
Like I know he's going to make me do that, right? So then when I grew up and decided I'm not going to be a missionary in Africa, and then I had the opportunity to move to Scotland, it was this like, oh, God, what God has for me, this is mission work. And they speak English, and they have Starbucks, and they wear scarves, and like these are my people, right? Like this is exactly, and so I do think that there is a belief system somewhere in some of us that says, if I really want to do it, it can't be what God has for me. If I really, if this is what I'm longing to do, it obviously isn't. God would never give me what I want,
Right.
And so. On the flip side, we do have to distinguish, like, we can't just go trailblazing and go, I'm going to do all this, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to move to LA, and I'm going to become a movie star, and the whole time the Lord's like, I've got a better thing for you.
Right.
Like, listen, settle, dig in. So I think that's why community is important, Sammy. I think, and Linda, I think that's why community is really important, is that you've got to have people that you, like I had this morning when I sat down at that breakfast, people that you go, I have this idea. What do you think? When I was moving from Marietta to Nashville, I remember I went to lunch at Moe's burrito place with 2 of my friends who were a married couple, and I said, what do you think's going to happen if I leave my hometown? And they were like, you will be fine. You can come back if you want. I just needed to, and I said, do you think this is the worst idea I've ever come up with ever? And so having people to process, I think that's why community matters. That's how we're going to know the difference. I think that's how you know the difference is you trust that God is speaking to other people on your behalf. I met with my pastor on Tuesday, and I said to him when I left his office, if at any point you see me doing something, or if you feel like I'm doing the wrong thing, you have to call and tell me. Because we got to have people that we trust that can step in and say, hey, you're thinking about joining the circus, and that's not the best use of your life. For me. For some people, that is the best use of their life. For Annie Downs, it is not.
Are you sure?
Well, no, I'm not. So I'll let you know if I decide.
You have a mean set of jazz hands there.
That's right. I can always do my jazz hands. Yeah. So I think if you have something in your heart that you're like, here's what I really want to do, I think you can trust that God put that there on purpose. Yeah. There's the story I write about in Let's All Be Brave from the Bible about the parable of the talents. That he gave, the landowner gave these bags of gold to people and wanted them to do something with it. And the only one that got punished was the one who hid it, the one who buried it, trying to keep it safe. We hear the story, and the first guy got 5 talents, and when the owner came back, he had 10 talents. Well, we don't know that if at some point in the story he had 15 talents and lost 5. Do you know what I mean? Like, all we know is that he invested what God had given him. So if you have desires, go after them until the door closes. Yeah. Go and involve your people. Get people around you who can speak into it with you.
Yeah, Annie, I want to. With that, Sammy? I totally do, because I think that we, like you said, we tend to believe false truths a lot about ourselves, about others, and I think the only way that you can really pursue that is to not only know, to have that knowledge, but to be known. And unless you're known, there is that beautiful something that comes out with that vulnerability. And like you said, you
cannot be brave by yourself. That is about the only, I think everyone has courage in them. I think everyone can do this with your life, but I'm telling you, if that's probably the one thing that will stick you right where you are, is if you try to do it totally by yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let me ask this. We're getting a lot of questions that are, on the heavier side of things in terms of, how do you be brave in the midst of struggles, in the midst of loss, dark times? We have a question here from Keith Wilson that says, my question is, how can God restore can God restore and how to be brave when all is so dark. So when you're in the midst of those, whether, like you said, whether it's loss, whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, where is that get up and go? How do you, when you can't do it on your own, how would you address that, Annie?
And I think sometimes it doesn't have to look like get up and go. I think sometimes it can look like holding on and just not giving up. That it is brave when you are in a dark place to get out of the bed and walk out of the house and go do something for somebody else or do something with someone else. I mean, courage does not have to look like having a great day, or getting over loss quickly. Even this is so mild compared to what some people deal with, but even in breakups, you think, I'm supposed to be better tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm supposed to, if you lose someone in your family, I'm supposed to grieve for a little while, but I need to be strong and get over it. And I think sometimes it is brave to say, I am still hurting, I am still in this, and I need you to be around me. And so for Keith, I'd say for sure God can restore anything. But I also think that being in a dark time does not mean you've lost your courage. When I think about a garden, seeds have to be buried, and they have to be dark, and they have to be covered in dirt in order to become anything that matters. And so sometimes we have to believe that in the process of our growth that we are the seeds that have been sown, and that those seeds of courage in us that have been sown may be in a dark place, but the Lord is watering, and there is sunshine and fruit will come of this. That is just what God has shown us in nature is true in the spiritual and is true in our lives. The light always comes after the dark. Fruit always comes from seeds that are planted and watered and cared for. And God says He does the watering. All we do is plant the seeds, right? And we get to be part of the harvest. So I would say if you feel like it's dark, that harvest is coming.
Love it. Thank you for the question, Keith, and thank you for that reminder, Annie. I mean, you've got so much wisdom in your head, and I know you don't. You're so humble, and I know that it's just really comes through the experience, and I think you allow God to flow through you, which is what's beautiful about reading your books, like Let's All Be Brave. We have a question, too, wondering, are we allowed to hear what other books are in your head that are upcoming? We've got inquiring minds want to know.
We can talk about other books. I'm always spinning around books. Part of it is Let's All Be Brave is so new, and I'm so enjoying talking about it with people. Because for a year and a half, I wasn't allowed to talk about it at all while I was writing it, except if we had coffee, right? So I wasn't allowed to talk about Let's All Be Brave at all. And now lots of people want to talk about Let's All Be Brave with me every day. And so I don't really have to think about the next book because I'm so enjoying the harvest of Let's All Be Brave, right? I mean, it's the same thing. I planted and watched for a whole year while this field laid empty and no one knew. And now that there are fruits, I'm getting to tend the garden. And so I'm not ready to plant a new garden, right? So I'll tell you the things that matter most to me, and we'll see if books come from this.
Okay.
But after God, right? God matters most to me. What matters after that is that God made you on purpose. And I got to say that in Perfectly Unique for teen girls. I would love to say that to adults. And that God made you to be brave, and we're going to do that with Let's All Be Brave. I also, things that make me feel alive, I love fun. I think we need to have more books about what it means to be a Christian and to have fun. Yes. So I would love to write about fun. I would love to write about friendship. I think friendship and relationships are really important. I would love to write about travel, because I think that a lot of times Christians think I either go on a mission trip or I go on a vacation, and I think there's a lot more to travel than that. And so I would love to talk about the breadth of travel and how God meets us in lots of places. In fact, there's a part of Let's All Be Brave where it talks about going around the world. And the number one reason we need to do that is that we are made in the image of God, and the people on the opposite side of the world from us look very different than us. Yes. And I picture a God that looks like me, ish, right? Not like me. But I picture a God that has my skin tone and features, my language, right? Right. And people in Africa see a different God, and people in India see a different God, and people in Brazil see a different God, and I think we need to meet them. Yeah. And so I would love to. So those are the things that are spinning. We aren't totally settled on anything next. We're just enjoying what God has done, and Let's All Be Brave and where that is going.
Love it. Well, we're going to let you enjoy it, and I want everyone else to enjoy it too. Remember, we have a 48-hour deal only, 2 days only, to get this book, Let's All Be Brave by Annie F. Downs. Go to the store at faithgateway.com and enter the code BRAVE. Not only will you get your 40% off, you'll get free shipping. So trust me, this is as good of a deal as you're going to get. You need this book. Get 2 of this books. Get books. I'm not writing today, obviously. I'm just going to get 2 of these books. One for you, one for a friend, someone that you know might need a little encouragement. Annie, take the final word. We've got just a minute left, but what would be your final word of encouragement that you would want to leave our audience with today about being brave?
Yeah, it's kind of what we talked about at the beginning, but the thing I want my friends to know is that you are already brave, and you are already doing brave things, and there is more to come. The better we get to know who we are, the better we get to know who God is, the more we can understand the brave things He's called us to. And so that's it to me, is you are already brave. You are already brave, and you need to celebrate it in yourself, and you need to point it out in the people around you. That's what's going to change the world, is when we notice the bravery that lives in us and celebrate the bravery that lives in our people.
Love it. Thank you so much, Annie. Again, the book is Let's All Be Brave by Annie F. Downs. Go to faithgateway.com. Get your copy for 40% off plus free shipping with the code BRAVE. We'll have this up so you can watch all of the wisdom again, share it with friends. Annie, it's always a joy. Love talking to you.
Love you, friend. You're the best.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Join us next week for another Faith Gateway Live Author Chat. Thanks.